You've been running through the woods for hours, twisting, turning, trying to lose whatever's been chasing you. But the screams are still there. A terrible, strained howling that only grows closer. Exhaustion brings you to your knees when the howl fades, replaced by deep, heavy impacts shaking the ground as something massive approaches. Just a few feet away, you see it emerge from the shadows. A massive snout, teeth bared in a snarl so close you can smell its rotting, decayed breath. You close your eyes, whisper a silent prayer, and wait for the end. But it never comes. When you open your eyes, it's gone. You just survived an encounter with the Dogman. To understand the history of the Dogman, we need to look back at what Michigan was like in the late 1800s. This was an era of explosive growth. Michigan had become the heart of the American lumber industry, fueling an economic boom and carving roads deep into forests that stood untouched for centuries. By 1887, much of the southern Lower Peninsula had already been stripped bare. Lumber operations pushed north into what's now Wexford County, dense, isolated woods filled with old-growth pine. And it was there, one evening in 1887, that two lumberjacks allegedly witnessed something impossible. They claimed to see a creature, about 7 feet tall, a body like a man's, but with the head of a wolf. That was the first recorded sighting of what we now call the Michigan Dogman. So you're probably asking, what is the Dogman? Descriptions usually match this first report, but details vary. Some say that it roams with a pack of wild dogs. A lot claim that it's by itself. A lot of the time, it's described as 7 feet tall, like this original report, but I've seen reports that have it as low as 6 feet tall and that have it above 10 feet tall. Its eyes have been described as blue, amber, red, or even yellow, like a real wolf's. As for its origins, it's a bit messy. Some tie it to Native American folklore, others insist it's an undiscovered species and it's perfectly natural. And then, of course, there are those who claim that it's a secret government bioweapon. One of the strange bits of lore that I came across says the Dogman only appears every 10 years on years ending in 7. Although I couldn't find an explanation for this apparent rule, and a lot of the stories that we're talking about today break this rule. For nearly a century after the 1887 report, sightings were relatively rare, few and far between. But in 1937, a 17-year-old named Robert Fortney claimed he was attacked by 5 wild dogs near the woods, and that one of them stood up on 2 legs, staring at him with bright blue eyes. The Dogman remained mostly an obscure legend until 1987 when a Michigan DJ named Steve Cook released a song called The Legend. The song told the story of a man encountering a half-dog, half-man creature, and it became a local hit. Though Cook later admitted he made the whole thing up as an April Fool's joke, saying, "I made it up completely from my own imagination, and somehow stumbled into a legend that goes back to Native American times." But even with the public knowledge that this song was fiction, sightings started pouring in. From 1993 to 94, a man known only as Ben reported 3 separate encounters. In one, he claimed the Dogman silently stood in his parents' driveway, staring at him until he screamed it off. Another came in 1994, when a driver hit what he thought was an animal, but when he stopped, the body was gone. The only evidence that he'd hit something at all was a tuft of gray fur stuck in the grill of his car. Now, most of these Dogman encounters, they're very short, very vague, very samey. But one story from a trucker named Joe Barger and a 6-year Army veteran, it's a little more interesting.
I would swear as a Christian on a Bible that this is all 100% factual truth.
In early summer, around 2017, Joe was hauling a 43,000-pound load of paper from a local Michigan mill when he noticed an air leak had developed on his rig. He pulled over, crawled under his trailer, and found a small cut near the rear brakes causing the leak. An easy fix, but while working on it, he felt an uneasy chill and claimed that he could hear guttural noises coming from the woods.
And I didn't know what exactly if the sound was. It wasn't natural.
When he looked up, he noticed shadows shifting like something massive was pacing just out of view. Assuming it was a black bear, he hurried to finish, climbed back in his truck, and pulled away. But as he climbed a hill, barely hitting 25 miles an hour, something appeared in his side view mirror. A massive wolf's head, pitch black and nearly the size of his truck window. Its white teeth gleamed inches from his face. One enormous clawed hand gripped the frame of his open window, and the other scraped along the door handle trying to pull it open. Joe met its eyes, yellow, intelligent, and filled with malice. He drew his Colt .45 and fired twice into the beast's head. The creature fell away, disappearing into the brush, and some minutes later, Joe turned his rig around to check and see if the body was there. It was not. Instead, he found a Jeep parked on the roadside with government plates, and two strangers standing nearby. When he asked what they were doing, they said they'd stopped to watch two black bears fighting. Later, Joe claimed he was detained by federal agents and accused of killing a government asset. These federal agents threatened him into silence and confiscated his gun. His bank account was also frozen. Years later, he broke his silence, convinced that the Michigan Dogman was a government bioweapon gone rogue. Now, I'll be honest, the idea that a U.S. government was cooking up, half-man, half-wolf super soldiers back in 1887, pretty unlikely, but I do love how boldly incompatible this is with the rest of the lore. Still, though, who knows? Maybe that's where all those missing Pentagon funds went. Joe's story is wild, but it's not the craziest Dogman encounter out there. That title might go to Casey, a man interviewed on the YouTube channel Dogman Encounters, which, by the way, Dogman Encounters. This channel has over 500 episodes, and they're all long format interviews of just Dogman stories. It's hundreds and hundreds of hours of Dogman content. So that's incredible, and if you want to look at that, I will make sure to put a link to it in my description of this video. Anyway, Casey's story takes place in New Hampshire, not Michigan, and I know that it's a Michigan video, but this story is too good to leave out if I'm talking about Dogman. Casey owned a seasonal campground in the White Mountain National Forest. One day, he decided to go hiking alone while his girlfriend rested in their camper. She drops him off at a nearby trailhead with their pit bull, planning to pick him up an hour later. Everything's fine until his dog froze about a quarter mile up the trail, completely terrified. And then the dog bolts right back down the trail. Casey turns to see what scared her. A hulking creature crouched down on all fours about 10 feet away. It had the body of a man, barrel-chested and massive, with human-like arms, but huge, muscular, and ending in long talons. Its legs were more canine, covered in matted fur and ending in massive paws, and its head was monstrous. A massive snout, dagger-like teeth, and glowing amber eyes filled with rage and intelligence. The Dogman stood up, and Casey could hear bones crack as it rose to its full height. That's over 10 feet tall. It raised its arms and wiggled his fingers at him, as if to show off how easily it could tear him apart. And then it roared. Casey describes the sound as so loud that it caused him to physically vomit. Finally, it smashed a nearby pine tree to the ground with one arm. And then, after displaying that incredible feat of strength, it just turns around and goes back into the forest. Casey turned to flee, and believe it or not, it gets stranger, because 100 feet behind him, something else steps out on the trail. A towering creature covered in brown fur. Not the Dogman. This is Bigfoot. Casey said Bigfoot made a shooing motion, like these type motion, and made a guttural ooh-ah sound, but like a lot deeper than my voice, as if it was telling him to leave. If Bigfoot's telling you to leave, you leave. So Casey left. And when Casey reached the trailhead, his girlfriend and his dog were waiting. He was pale, shaking, and unable to speak. That night, back in their camper, something began messing with the door latch, slowly and deliberately, as if trying to figure out the mechanism. Then, 3 massive bangs on the door, followed by the sound of something sprinting away. And then, silence. At sunrise, they packed and they left for good. Now, for Casey, the woods may have gone quiet that night, but legends have a way of echoing. Through stories, through fear, and maybe through something darker, like a shadow just past the tree line. Now, do I think the Dogman is a secret government bioweapon? No. Do I think there is a Dogman? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. But what I do believe is that in the deep forests of North America, there are secrets that we don't understand and that we might not ever understand. So whatever you believe, maybe keep your door locked tonight. And if you ever hear a strange howl echo through the trees, remember the Dogman.